Welcome to Valley Mobile Automotive. I thought to myself, today is a good day to blow something up. This episode is dedicated to airbag safety. Sometimes working on cars, we have to work around airbags. We have to pull them out, we have to disconnect them, or just work around them, moving their wiring and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're safe. So I'm not going to get too in-depth on how an airbag works. Basically, an airbag or SRS control module or computer controls when these things deploy. And it uses multiple sensors, crash sensors, gyros, accelerometers in the vehicle to know when you're in a crash. So the computer says, hey, we're in a crash or we're in a position that needs deployment. And so it sends electricity on this wire and poof, there you go. So that's the basics of how these are supposed to operate. But when we're working around airbags, we want to know as mechanics, what does it take to deploy an airbag? Because we don't want accidental deployment, right? And oops, I drop an airbag. Now what? Can static electricity accidentally ignite an airbag? How much voltage does it take to deploy an airbag? See, these are the things we want to know. So when we're working around airbag systems, we can feel confident and do it safely. So the first rule with airbags is if you ever have to remove an airbag or the airbag module, the SRS module, disconnect the battery and wait at least 1 minute. The reason for that 1 minute wait is there are capacitors within the system as backups. In case you are rolling or something happens, and your battery gets shorted to the hood or somehow you lose power, there are capacitors as backup electricity so you can still deploy your airbags. So disconnect the battery, wait a minute, that'll bleed the capacitors down and reduce accidental discharge. If you take, for example, the airbag control module, sometimes those accelerometers or gyros are inside the module. Pull the module off, turn it upside down to get to the connector. Now the computer, still powered up, thinks the car has just rolled. So it'll deploy the airbags because it thought it was in a crash. So disconnecting the battery will eliminate electricity to the control module and eliminate electricity available for the airbag deployment. So that's why we disconnect batteries before removing one of these. Once the airbag has been disconnected, removed, set aside, the battery can once again be reconnected. When the airbag module detects an issue with this airbag, this is the steering wheel airbag, it'll just turn off that circuitry. And another airbag in the system won't deploy just because this one has been disconnected. So no worries there. Once it's removed, set aside, and you need to start the car for whatever reason, for further diagnosis, further repair, that's okay. Just remember to disconnect the battery again before reconnecting the airbag. When handling an airbag, we want to be careful not to drop it. Not because it'll automatically deploy. I'll drop one of these outside and show you that it should not automatically deploy. It needs electricity to deploy. So it's not like, oh my goodness, this is going to blow up if I touch it. It's not. But what it can do is damage the igniter inside or damage the casing. This case is designed to crack or split in a certain way, a certain direction. By dropping it, let me show you if I can show you. This one's been dropped. And so now it is split. So this would need to be replaced because of that split. Another thing is never set these on their face. If something freak happens and it does decide to deploy, you've just created a missile because it will launch the bottom, shooting the whole airbag up in the air. And you'll see that during deployment. If you have it like this on its back, the top facing up, now the bag will deploy, but it won't launch this entire thing because that would really suck. You can hurt yourself. If it's inside, like you're working and you put it on the passenger seat, something freak happens. We ought to be careful with the freak stuff. That would really suck to break the windshield or break the side window or whatever. It can cause a lot of damage. There's a lot of force coming out of these. So never upside down like this on the face, but right side up. All right, I've rambled enough. Let's go outside. Let's deploy one of these. We want to know if I drop it, what's gonna happen, and what does it take to actually ignite the igniter inside and get it to deploy. And then also, I'm gonna do it face down, so we'll get to also see the launching force that one of these have. All right, let's do it. All right, so first I'm gonna do the drop test. Will these deploy if you drop them on the ground accidentally? Three out of three, no deployments. So I'm gonna throw it one more time just to confirm. Another 3 tosses, no deployments. Does that mean they can never deploy being dropped? Well, I'm not gonna say that. There's always those accidents that can happen, but they're not designed to deploy being dropped. They're designed to deploy with electricity. The control module sends electricity to the airbag, causing it to deploy, not the impact of the vehicle. So they're not designed to deploy on impact. All right, we're ready to deploy this thing. One thing I have to say is please do not try this at home. I am a professional. I'm gonna start off with a 1.5 volt battery, see if we can light this thing up. So 1.5 volts is not enough to light it up. So I'm gonna increase it to just over 3 volts. Whoa. And 3 volts is not enough to light it up. So now we're gonna go to a 9 volt battery. So that thing was gone in a second. I only had my ground camera rolling. I thought I had this one rolling, so you didn't get to see the height. But I would say probably at least 50 feet. That thing launched up in the air, and then because of its weight in the balloon, it actually came down kind of like a parachute. Kind of cool. So 1.5 volts did not have enough juice to get it to go. 3 volts did not have enough juice to get it to launch. 9 volts did. So 9 volt battery is what got it. Now, of course, we know 12 volts, 13, 14 from the engine battery, you know, that's gonna make it go off. But 9 volts is what it took here. So that's something to just keep in mind. Static electricity. How much voltage and current does static electricity produce? Something to look up. Can static electricity cause one of these things to ignite? Think about it. All right, so we got 2 more to deploy. That one was upside down and launched up. The next one I'm just gonna do regular side, and it should stay in motion, shouldn't go everywhere, and you can see the importance of how you place your airbag once you have it out of the vehicle. So let me get all that set up, and I'll have this rolling for sure. So that deployed much different. It didn't launch, it just blew up. Now, of course, you don't want to have any tools or anything setting on top of it, because those will fly all over the place. But a lot safer having that face side up. Now the wind's picking up. We're going to do one more deployment and then go back in the shop. All right, this is our last deployment. Just to show you the force of this life-saving device, I have a concrete cinder block on the top. I believe it's 8 by 8 by 12, something like that. So a pretty heavy weight on the top. We're gonna see how much lift this airbag can produce. Again, don't try this at home. There's potential for all sorts of bad things to happen. So just watch and enjoy. So again, just showing the temperature on one of these things after deployment. It's pretty crazy. Definitely enough to burn you. All right, there you go. It's always fun when you get to blow stuff up. It amazes me how much force, how much power is packed inside one of these airbags. You can see the potential for some serious injury. This is the igniter assembly pulled out of the airbag. This is the back with the electrical connector. and then this is what would be inside the airbag housing. You can see the little holes for the gas to escape out of when it ignites. So the actual mechanism and powder and stuff is inside this unit. We won't tear it apart. I tried on a different one, and it proved to be a little harder than anticipated. So we won't tear one apart, but everything inside here ignites and then blows out these little holes here inside the bag. To reiterate, airbag safety. Anytime we remove an airbag, unplug an airbag, remove a module, or turn an airbag module, we want to make sure that the battery is disconnected for at least 1 minute. That 1 minute wait time is to get rid of or diminish the capacitors of any stored charge so that they can't deploy the airbags. But once the airbag is out of the vehicle, that airbag is pretty dormant. So it would take a lot to get that airbag to deploy out of the vehicle. I've never seen one deploy out of a vehicle. There's always that 1 in a million that it may. So if you do, have it face side up. As seen in the explosion, a face side up explosion is much less damaging than a face down explosion. So just keep that in mind. I still get nervous sometimes working around airbags. Well, maybe not nervous, but you're always still cautious. Another thing I want to mention is in case they're dropped. A lot of manufacturers recommend that if it's a hard drop onto a solid floor, to replace that airbag. The damage that could be caused may be unnoticeable until it needs to deploy, and it doesn't because of an internal failure from that drop. So that's just something to keep in mind, a suggestion. A lot of manufacturers say replace it. All right, hopefully this was educational. Comment down below, like, subscribe. See you on the next one.